This quote appeared to me one morning as I sat sipping hot coffee and collecting my thoughts for this episode. "Seek nothing outside of yourself" jumped out at me the most. I thought it was incredibly synchronistic because the topic I was organizing revolves around how some people seek answers outside of themselves, something that, according to this quote by Japan's most well-known samurai, Miyamoto Musashi, encouraged others to avoid doing. But before we get into things, here's a bit of the background story. Earlier this year, I was talking to a fellow Shmup player, and he expressed how he had just recently jumped into a harder difficulty in a game he's familiar with on the game's normal mode. His initial reaction to the increased intensity was that he felt as though he was missing some key lesson that was necessary to wrap his head around the demands of this harder mode. I was immediately inspired to do a talk on this and asked if he was okay with that. I received his blessing, but I want everyone listening to understand that not everything I cover in today's episode is a direct reflection of this player's views, mindset, or experience. I'm simply using his initial remark as a gateway. So let's get into it. If you encounter something and feel it's beyond you, are you missing some key lesson? I've always resonated with the idea that we have everything we need within ourselves. Yet I feel all too often people don't give their potential enough credit or opportunity, hastily forming conclusions that extinguish any chance of discovering the path forward that initially feels non-existent. In my experience, though, it's never actually a question of whether or not you're missing some key ingredient, but instead whether you choose to immerse yourself in the experience long enough to understand the process and your required involvement with it. One of my all-time favorite quotes came from Albert Einstein, who said, "It's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer." How often do people give up on something prematurely simply because they don't understand it or expect it to be easier at first? And why is the initial thought that the answer must lie somewhere else? If there's one thing I've learned from sinking deeper into the games I play, it's that the most challenging situations can often be overcome with simple solutions. But those solutions never reveal themselves when a game is experienced at a surface level or when we try to find the answer elsewhere. Solutions have no reason to show themselves if the player cannot push beyond that initial resistance the brain throws up when something appears to be more complex or different compared to what we're used to. Albert Einstein also said, "I have no special talents, I am only passionately curious." This is another great quote that shows us that it's not about being a special player with the divine light of the ancient shooting spirits shining down upon you. The important thing is to have that inner drive to learn, experiment, and ultimately forge your way through the challenges and situations you encounter. You have to be the one because no one else and nothing else can walk this path for you. It always needs to come from within. I'm not saying you will never be able to take useful ideas, experience, or information from one situation to another, because to some degree that can be applied, but in terms of solving a complex attack pattern or some other part of the game, that needs to be tackled within that space, and to drop something because of that initial lack of understanding it, I feel is a disservice to yourself. You might think you're not good enough yet and that you need to go and play all of these other games to learn this and that, but I feel the lessons you need most are in the situations you're avoiding. If you always turn your back on the things you don't understand, you very quickly find the boundaries of your journey and the limits of your experience and potential, creating an incredibly tiny bubble for you to exist in. If a situation is more severe, that doesn't mean you lack the tools necessary to overcome it. It's just that you need to figure out sections that demand a lot more from you, so your previous methods or way of thinking likely won't suffice. I once heard a quote that said something along the lines of how you cannot solve a problem on the same level it was created. I think when it comes to something you want to figure out, you need to rise above the complexity, drawing more resourcefulness from inside and certainly learning more about the experience you want to navigate beyond that initial normal mode or whatever it is that serves as your foundation. But to bring things back to the quote from Miyamoto Musashi, remember that you already have everything you need within. The things I've achieved in hard or expert modes are not because of key lessons from elsewhere, but because I chose to apply myself to a far greater degree in each challenging situation. It's in that space that the drive within can be awakened. It's a choice, it's the spirit of determination, it's a mindset. It's surrendering to the flow and in turn becoming one with it. It's the path of mastery. It's all of these things that must stem from the very core of your being. While exploring below the surface instead of skimming it does require more time, this kind of investment doesn't have to be viewed as a commitment so great it diminishes the fun you can have. Tackling a harder difficulty or even a normal run with self-imposed restrictions can certainly mean you'll be at a game for an extended period, but the idea of investing more time to further your skills, experience, awareness, understanding, and everything else should not deter you. On the contrary, there is immense joy and fulfillment that comes from pushing yourself into these deeper levels of learning and connection. So much so that once you start experiencing this for yourself, you will never want to go back to the way you used to treat shooters. This is my experience anyway, and perhaps this video can serve a constructive purpose and help others deepen their relationship with these games, or allow this message to branch out into other areas of life. Like the deep and grounding rhythms of the Udu you've witnessed during this episode, there is a powerful momentum and purpose within each of us waiting to be tapped into and expressed more fully. Instead of seeking answers outside of yourself, know that you possess the ability to discover or create the path forward, channeling your inner energy and shaping it as you see fit. Thank you for sharing your time and attention today, and we'll see you again soon.